Welcome to this explainer. So, if you work in local commerce, and I mean whether that's a bustling bakery, a corner grocery store, or maybe the neighborhood hardware shop, you already know that clear communication is basically your whole job, right? But when you're serving English-speaking customers, there's this one specific challenge that goes way beyond just being polite. See, in commerce, mishearing or mispronouncing a single English number, it isn't just some minor language slip-up. It literally costs you money. So today, we're diving right into the essential English you need at the counter to make absolutely sure your transactions are perfectly clear every single time.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a 5-step roadmap today for a flawless transaction. We're going to cover 1. The cost of mishearing, 2. Talking about prices, 3. Weights and measures, 4. Grammar for the counter, and finally, closing the sale. Let's just jump right in.
Part 1, the cost of mishearing, or as it's perfectly subtitled here, the teen versus tie trap. Okay, so the absolute highest stakes for pronunciation happen right at the cash register. And the rule for vocal stress here is incredibly specific, but it's a real game changer. If a number ends in teen, you've got to use a high, loud sound. You literally want to over-accentuate that ending. But if it ends in ty, that requires a short, flat sound. The stress falls completely on the beginning of the word, not the end. Now, what's really interesting about this setup is how clearly it visualizes the sound differences. Just listen to this. 13 is pronounced thir-teen, with that high stress right at the end. Now compare that to 30, which is 30. You hear that? The emphasis shifts straight to the front and the end is totally flat. It's the exact same deal with 14 versus 40. Getting this wrong? Well, it means a customer might think they owe you 15 euros when they actually owe you 50. And honestly, that is a remarkably quick way to either lose a customer or just totally wipe out your day's profit.
All right, moving on to part 2, talking about prices, money talk.
So, now that we can pronounce the numbers without losing our shirts, we need to state the actual price confidently. And the basic formula for this is just beautifully simple. First, you say the big number. That's your euros. Second, you say the small number, your cents. And here's a fantastic little shortcut for you. Native English speakers will very often drop the words euros and cents entirely. It just makes the whole transaction smoother and way faster. For example, if the total is 12 euros and 50 cents, you absolutely could say 12 euros 50. That is 100% correct. But the most common, rhythmic, and honestly just punchy phrasing you're going to hear and use is simply 12.50. Big number, small number. It's confident, and it's crystal clear. And the best part is, this rule scales up effortlessly. So for a larger amount, like 199, we follow the exact same logic and just drop the currency entirely, 199. It keeps the conversation moving so quickly at the counter, which, let's be real, both you and your customer are going to appreciate when you've got a line stretching out the door. But wait, before you can even give the price, the customer usually has to ask for it, right? So how does a customer typically request these prices? They usually ask, how much? And this brings up a really fascinating grammatical point in English. Money is considered an uncountable noun. We don't say how many monies, we say how much money. And the exact grammatical response you need depends entirely on what's actually being bought. For a singular item, like say a single apple, they're going to ask, how much is it? Or how much is this? And you respond, it is 5 euros. But for plural items, like a whole basket of apples, they'll ask, how much are they? You just match that plural phrasing right back with, they are 10 euros. Matching their singular or plural phrasing is a tiny detail, but it makes you sound incredibly professional.
Let's move to section 3 and see how this builds. Weights and measures, quantities for the counter.
Now, if you work in a bakery or a hardware store, you're constantly weighing things. You've got your absolute essentials. 1 kilo for 1 kilogram, 500 grams for 500 grams, or 1 liter for liquids. But I really want to emphasize the fractions here. When a customer wants a half of something, you say half a kilo or half a liter. For a quarter, it's a quarter of a kilo. Getting super comfortable with these halves and quarters is absolutely vital. It makes your transactions lightning fast. All right, section 4, grammar for the counter, plurals and verbs. When you're ringing up multiple items, you're relying on what is probably the simplest, but definitely the most crucial rule in English plurals. Just add an S to the unit. 1 bottle becomes 2 bottles. 1 kilo becomes 3 kilos.
This brilliantly illustrates how straightforward it is, but remembering to actively pronounce that S at the end is what assures the customer that you've actually counted their items correctly.
Alongside those plurals, you really only need 3 essential verbs in the present simple tense to completely narrate the exchange. To cost, as in, it costs 10 euros. To weigh, it weighs 2 kilos. And to give, I give you 5 euros change. Honestly, with just these 3 actions, you can comfortably guide any customer through the entire process from start to finish.
Which brings us to Section 5, Closing the Sale, our quick conversion guide.
To actually hand over the goods and successfully take the money, there is a very strict, logical 3-step sequence using 3 vital terms. Step 1, you state the individual price using the word each. Step 2, you give the final total using altogether. And Step 3, you return the money using the word change. Okay, let's break these down.
First up, the word each. The crucial point here is that this is your ultimate safeguard against confusion. You use this for individual prices. So if a customer is buying 5 pastries and you say they are 2 euros each, they immediately understand the math. It totally prevents that incredibly awkward moment where they think the entire box of 5 is just 2 euros. No way.
Next is altogether. And this might just be the most important word for actually securing the final revenue of the sale. You use this for the absolute final total. That's 20 euros altogether. It signals to the customer that the scanning is done, the weighing is done, and it is officially time for them to open their wallet.
Finally, we have change. This is simply the money you return to the customer. Looking them in the eye and saying, "Here is your change," firmly marks the successful completion of the whole interaction. It's polite, it's exceptionally clear, and it leaves a really great final impression. But let's be real for a second, sometimes a store is just loud, or maybe accents are clashing. There is a fantastic, deeply empathetic piece of advice for this exact situation. When speaking to customers, speak slowly and clearly. If they don't understand the number, write it down on a piece of paper or show them the calculator screen. This is your ultimate escape hatch. Never, ever feel embarrassed to use a visual aid. Because at the end of the day, clear communication always wins, even if your spoken grammar fails for a moment. Just flashing that calculator screen bridges any language gap instantly.
Which leaves us with one final question to think about. Are you ready to save the sale? Because by mastering the teen versus T stress, by confidently dropping the word euros, and by utilizing terms like each and altogether, you aren't just speaking English. You are actively protecting your store's hard-earned revenue. So the next time you step behind that counter, you've got the exact toolkit you need to make clear, confident sales. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.